Hi everyone, we will start our webinar now. Thank you very much for all the participants and our great speaker today. My name is Marjo Chantreau. I'm the Private Sector Digital Innovation Lead for the Better Than Cash Alliance, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our second Global Learning Exchange webinar organized by the Better Than Cash Alliance, the ILO Better Work Programme, and IFC. The objective of this learning exchange is for all organizations engaged in transitioning wages from cash to digital solutions to share good practices and learn from each other from experience in different countries. And our objective is to be able to drive more action and collaborative initiatives for all the different countries and organizations. Today's webinar will be recorded. It is not live stream, but it will be recorded so it could be made available after the webinar. The participant microphone will be muted during the entire webinar session, but please, we would be very interested to have any of your questions or requests for more details or learnings to be shared with the Q&A opportunity on Zoom. So you can add any question during one of the speaker intervention, and we'll collect those questions and make sure to share at the end so it can become a more interactive session. And I'm very happy, and I will come back at the end of the sessions to moderate the Q&A time. And I'm very happy and very pleased to introduce our moderator for today. Craig Churchill is the Chief of the Social Finance Program at the International Labour Organization, and he will be moderating today's session with our great speakers. Craig has 2 decades of social finance experience in both developed and developing countries. In his current position, he focuses on the potential of financial services and policies to achieve social objectives and the decent work agenda of the ILO. Thank you very much, Craig, and I pass it on to you for the introduction.
Thanks, Marjo. I hope everyone can hear me okay. From the ILO's perspective, the adoption of responsible digital wage payments has the potential to enhance the productivity and sustainability of enterprises, boost financial inclusion and social protection of workers, and promote the formalization of employment and enterprises, all of which is very much in line with the ILO's decent work agenda. It also resonates with the ILO Centenary Declaration adopted last year, the ILO's 100th birthday, which calls on the ILO to harness the fullest potential of technological progress to achieve decent work. We know from the 2017 Global Findex database that 230 million people receive private wages in cash, and many more are paid digitally, but have limited use over the control of their accounts. This figure most probably has reduced in the past few years, and perhaps even more this year with the COVID-19 outbreak and the need for employers to pay workers' wages in a safe and timely manner during the lockdown. However, a fast transition does not always bring benefits to both workers and employers, and may even be harmful. In many countries, there's a lot to accomplish still to ensure that the transition makes sense for employers and for workers, especially women, to make sure that they have control over their wages. I feel this global learning series comes at the right time to provide a space to learn from each other's successes, but also the challenges, and to create collaboration opportunities to accelerate the transition to responsible digital wage payments. The first webinar in July focused on the impact of COVID-19 on digital wage payments in the garment industry and highlighted various experiences from Bangladesh and India. The second webinar will give emphasis to the importance of worker-focused responses and will highlight lessons from various countries with a focus on Cambodia, where digitization of wages is underway. I'm pleased to have so many of you join us for this important topic. And now I would like to introduce the first distinguished guest we have, Leora Clapper, who's the lead economist at the World Bank in the Finance and Private Sector Research Team. Her publications focus on corporate and household finance, banking, entrepreneurship, and risk management. And our current research studies the impact of digital financial services, especially for women. So Leora, thanks for coming, even though it's very early in the morning for you. It'd be great if you could tell us a bit about the potential benefits and challenges of wage digitization of garment workers. And in particular, are there lessons that we can learn from the journeys, the digital wage payment journeys of other countries?
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to join you today to discuss the importance of electronic wage payments for factory workers. I work in the Development Research Group at the World Bank, which is at the intersection of data, policy, and research. I've recently been studying the question of why wage digitization matters. Why is it better to pay workers into an account rather than in cash? Next slide, please. So let's start by reviewing a growing body of research suggesting many potential development benefits from financial inclusion, especially from the use of digital financial services, including mobile money services, payment cards, and other fintech applications. The benefits from financial inclusion can be wide-ranging. Unlike cash, which is easy to spend, give away, and steal, mobile money can offer women financial control. Studies have argued that mobile money may help women escape poverty, get better jobs, and strengthen their role in household bargaining. Financial services can also help people accumulate savings and increase spending on necessities. For example, women-headed households in Nepal spend 15% more on nutritious foods like meat and fish, and 20% more on education after receiving free savings accounts. Mobile money also lets people quickly and easily collect money from faraway friends and relatives during an emergency, which helps them manage unexpected expenses and stops them from sliding into poverty. In addition, financial services can lower the cost of receiving payments. A study found that switching the monthly payment of government social benefits from cash to mobile phones saved the recipients 20 hours on average in overall travel and wait time to obtain the payments. Next slide, please. I collect the global Findex data, which found in 2017 that only 22% of adults in Cambodia had a financial account, as compared to 31% in Vietnam, 82% in Thailand, and as compared to almost 60% on average in lower middle income countries. In Cambodia, we don't find a gap in account ownership between men and women, but only 14% of adults living in the poorest 40% of households have an account. Thinking about ways to expand inclusive access to digital financial services, especially to poor adults, adults living in rural households, should be a high priority. We also use the Findex data, as shown here, to measure the percent of adults that use their account to make or receive any digital payments, including the use of cards, a phone, or the internet to pay their bills or purchase stuff, or to receive wages or a government payment, or to send or receive remittances. Globally, 44% of adults in developing countries make or receive a digital payment. In China, almost 70% of adults do so. However, in Cambodia, only 16% of adults make or receive a digital payment, suggesting tremendous potential for innovation and growth. And next slide, please. Digital wage payments are also a proven way to build financial inclusion. For example, 20% of banked women in Thailand open their first account to receive an electronic wage or government payment. Globally, about 200 million adults open their first account to receive a digital wage payment from a private sector employer. Next slide, please. But there are still opportunities for progress globally. If private sector employers digitize their wages, as mentioned earlier, up to about 230 million unbanked adults could get their first account. Next slide, please. So a lot of progress on wage digitization has been driven by the large brands, the buyers, who encourage or sometimes require their suppliers to pay workers electronically into a bank or mobile money account. Many of these brands are active in the Better Than Cash Alliance, who support local suppliers committed to digitizing workers' wages. Why do brands care whether their workers are paid by cash or electronically? Well, we'll hear more about this from other panelists, but it's mostly because digital wage payments create an electronic trail. The factories are paying fair wages to their workers, which is important to buyers and their shareholders and customers. But as I'll also discuss, electronic wage payments is also good for factories and good for workers. Next slide, please. For employers, digital wage payments can increase productivity. Paying workers in cash is a huge ordeal. You have to bring in giant trucks filled with currency, and you need to insure the trucks and hire armed guards. Then you need to spend hours lining up workers to get paid one by one. It's a massive drain of resources. With the support of the Better Than Cash Alliance, we interviewed about 30 garment factories in Bangladesh that migrated from cash to electronic wage payments. We found that paying workers in cash is really expensive. Each worker spends about 30 minutes off their production line to receive his or her wages. The factory's production line stops about 1,250 hours every month for workers to be paid. That's time that could be spent, that's unproductive time. Administrative staff also spends about 13 minutes per worker to prepare and disperse the wages, representing 480 lost hours of administrative staff per month. The average monetized cost is estimated at about 45 cents per worker. Next slide, please. So we then talked to the managers about these 30 garment factories in Bangladesh, and we asked them about their experience paying cash as compared to paying electronically. We heard that time savings are significant. Before, as I mentioned, the managers need to halt the production to have workers line up to receive the cash payment, waste the supervisor's time doling out the cash. There are also cost savings related to security costs of handing out cash, the monetized time costs of paying workers and supervisors when they weren't on the line. But the cost savings also depends on the mode of payments and the cost structure of partnering with a financial institution or fintech. Some factories also reported the cost of MIS upgrades to automate and digitize their internal payroll. But in all cases, the managers reported a net cost savings. It's also important to note that managers reported that workers were satisfied with the digital products and that workers didn't want to go back to cash payments. We also heard that electronic wage payments is easier and more efficient than paying in cash, safer and more secure for the factory, as well as the workers. And as discussed in the last slide, increases transparency that can help with audits and supply chain accountability. Next slide, please. As importantly, there might also be benefits to workers who might, for the first time, have access to accounts and the ability to save. This is a photo for a few years I've been working on a digital wage payment project in Bangladesh. We went to these factories where people were previously all paid in cash, and we split the workers into 3 groups to do an experiment. One group received digital wage payments into a new account, another group received an account with the direct wage payment, and the last one received no account and continued to be paid in cash. The results show that workers enjoyed several benefits from digital payments. The workers who got accounts plus a digital wage payment actively used their accounts and developed financial capability and confidence in the course of transacting. They increased their savings, more than doubling their savings as compared to workers paid in cash. And they were better able to manage economic emergencies. They were less likely to report going hungry at the end of the month. There were also spin-off benefits. In areas where workers live, there's an overall decrease in consumer abuses because suddenly everyone became more financially capable. And so, for example, unscrupulous mobile money agents were no longer able to take advantage of them. Next slide, please. But finally, there were also challenges. Workers were overwhelmingly skeptical of the financial system. Many were not thrilled about getting paid digitally at first. Most of them struggled with numeracy and literacy. We dealt with these problems in a few ways. We provided basic training, that we'll hear a lot more about from BSR, on using accounts, and we made sure agents were available on site to help them on payday. Over time, as workers used their accounts, they became more comfortable using digital financial services and more trustful of the financial system. So thank you for the opportunity to share our research and experiences, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thanks, Leora. That's quite some compelling evidence there. Hopefully we'll see similar results from other countries as you found in Bangladesh. I want to switch to the next speaker now, Jenny Hicks, Hickey is the Deputy Program Manager for the ILO IFC program, Better Factories Cambodia. She's worked with the ILO previously in Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Thailand. Jenny, it would be great if you could tell us a bit about the factories that you're working with. I understand that 90% of them pay in cash. And do we understand why? And what are the challenges for employers and workers to make the transition?
Thank you for the introduction, Craig. Good evening from Cambodia. It's great to be here with you all talking about this very important topic. I'll start with a few words about Better Factories Cambodia, and I think you can go on to the next slide. Thank you. So BFC is an ILO-IFC partnership. It's one of 9 Better Works in garment-producing countries around the world. For the past 20 years, we have been supporting workplace improvements in Cambodia, and today work in 600 factories here. Our work in factories is supporting them to make sustainable improvements and doing this in a way that is inclusive of worker and manager voice, which is much the same as what we do at country level, bringing together employer and worker groups and governments and brands. And this is important for how we want to see the transition to digital finance in Cambodia, that we can make sure that all of these voices are in the mix. We're talking about workers today, and in garment producing countries, power dynamics are not in favor of workers. And it can be very difficult to hear what the genuine issues and concerns are and to really make sure that they're part of the decision-making process. Digital finance, there's a huge amount of fantastic opportunities here, and there's also a lot of money to be made from, 600,000 workers here, and I guess the role that the ILO will play is making sure that, and working with our partners, that this is done in a fair and transparent way, and that different groups have full visibility on what this will mean for them, and workers understand what it means for their finances and their savings and their lives. To your question on why it hasn't happened in Cambodia yet, the topic of digital payment has been on the table for quite a while, and the garment sector here is mostly foreign direct investment, so 95%. And what that means is that decisions about Cambodian factories are made for the most part outside of Cambodia, and it can take quite a bit longer for big changes like this to happen. It's also at the moment very much a cash-based society, and this is something that is ingrained in the culture. Banks are relatively new here. People trust cash, and if we think about lending money here, there's a huge amount of informal lending that you'll find in all sectors. So I guess this is quite a life-changing shift for some people, and it takes time to build that trust and to work out the actual fairness element of something like this. When we were prepping for this call, Leora didn't mention it today, but she talked about a woman in a garment factory that she was working in, that her mother-in-law used to wait outside the gates to take her wages from her. And I just thought that story said it all. And the reason the ILO and we're all involved in this conversation is because it has the potential to give workers, 80% of whom are women, more agency, more control over their money, safety, ability to save better. And there's a lot of examples of digital payments being a tool for female empowerment. And I think Ella and Setipam from BSOR can speak to that very well after me. Productivity has been mentioned. Cash payments happen twice a month in Cambodian garment factories. Hugely time consuming, and just countless days of staff and security time prepping for these payments. Another important opportunity is increased transparency. Digital wages can really help employers to comply with national legislation, and also help to modernization of the sector and systems in factories. So in terms of challenges, maybe not challenges, but questions that need to be asked is in relation to workers' financial ecosystem. workers here earn $190 per month, and most of their purchases are made through cash. So lunch, 2,000 real, 25 cents, and you can go back to the other slide. Moped, transport, food from the markets. And what we don't have visibility on at the moment is what costs workers would incur. Is their landlord or their food seller, will they accept the payments? Is there a charge for them making the payments? And yeah, do factories cover digital payments costs? So I think if the ecosystem is weak in terms of consumer protection, this can be harmful for workers. But these are all questions that are in the process of being figured out. IFC are planning an in-depth survey this year, so that will help us figure out, I guess, how we can make this beneficial for workers. An added layer here in Cambodia is that garment sector management tend not to be from Cambodia, and organizational change is incredibly complex anywhere. But if you think about a workforce of thousands of people, different ways of communicating, different language, different cultures, it takes really a strong culture of workplace communication and dialogue. And this is a core part of what we do, very important for respectful and decent workplaces, but also in the context of digital finance, where in the earlier phases, there really needs to be the communication channel for workers and managers to surface the issues. So the slide you have in front of you there, we called 300 workers when COVID hit here, just to see how they were getting on and how they were being disrupted by issues in the supply chain. So this wasn't a financial education or a digital literacy survey, but some points came up that we thought would be interesting for this group. Approximately 1 in 5 workers have said they've been unable to make regular loan payments. And workers we spoke to, their biggest concern was personal finance. And this was above safety at work, family safety, and also in the midst of COVID panic, when they were there was lots of rumors and there was a lot of panic. This was still what they were most concerned about. And I think this gives an indication of how dire that issue is in Cambodia. Nearly 30% of workers said that they were already paid digitally, and two-thirds said it would be convenient to receive digital payments. So from this fairly small survey, you can see that there's openness to digital payments, but also huge concerns about loans and not having enough money to get by. And it's not really a surprise. There's been a huge amount of research done on this, and especially for garment workers, the level of debt that they're in. So I think it's very important to think about overall financial education. So not just how workers can access their wages digitally, but also how you can equip them with the knowledge to stop them getting into these situations and to help them get out of the situations that they're in now. So yeah, it's great to be here discussing a way forward and thinking about ways to support the process. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So it does sound like there's some challenges ahead, but also opportunities. And I think we'll hear more about those from the team from BSR. So we've got Ella Moffat, who manages BSR's Her Finance Digital Wages Program, which increases financial inclusion in global supply chains by supporting wage digitization for low-income garment workers, especially women in Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Egypt. And we also have Sethipong Sak, who's the representative for her project in Cambodia, with expertise in program management, social development, gender, financial inclusion, communication campaigns, and digital innovation. So a couple questions to the two of you. Thanks for being here. What work is currently taking place in Cambodia, and what are the lessons being applied by Her Finance? Also, what practical tools and lessons does BSR have for factories making the transition to digital wage payments?
Okay, great, thank you, Craig, and thank you for having us on the panel. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so just briefly, just to explain, BSR is a not-for-profit business membership organisation that helps companies to make good decisions about their impact on people, society and environment. And as part of that, we have a women's empowerment programme called Her Project, which supports low-income workers, global supply chains with a focus on women. We've helped over 800 factories and farms, 1.6 million workers through our workplace programmes on health, financial inclusion, empowerment. Within that, I work on the Her Project Digital Wages programs, and we help factories and workers to transition responsibly from cash to digital wages. And our program started in 2015 in Bangladesh with our partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where we've helped over 150,000 workers at 70 factories to be paid digitally. And so we've used all of that learning around that to set up our digital wages program in Cambodia. So if you can go to the next slide, please. And so as you've heard from Leora, there is a business and social case for wage digitisation, and from Jenny that there is potential to digitise garment sector wages in Cambodia. And so we just wanted to share some of the insights and recommendations that we have developed. Because wage digitisation is relatively new in the garment sector, as Jenny said, around less than 10% of the factories are being paid digitally. So managers may not have experience of digitising. And so one of the most important things that we'd recommend is to take the time to plan, prepare and to digitise. This will allow time to consult workers and managers to assure them about the change, because it's a big change, it's payroll, and to stagger the wage digitisation so any issues can be identified and overcome with a smaller group rather than the whole factory, such as demand on cashing out on payday. You wouldn't want to change the payroll in 1 month and suddenly all these problems surface and then you have to go back to cash and then you've lost all of that goodwill that may have been generated. It's really important to review the different financial service provider options, and there's a couple of good options in Cambodia. And to really think about the things like accessibility, availability and affordability. So we encourage managers to think through questions such as, where would workers go to cash out? Are there enough cash out points to manage demand on payday? What are the fees and charges for the factory and also for workers? And also we'd encourage, once they've gone through the options, is potentially to consult with workers. And that's something that I've seen done in a factory that I visited in Cambodia, had done exactly that, and there was really high acceptance for digital wages as a result. We also encourage a business benefit analysis, because one of the key concerns that we hear is around the perceived cost of digital wages. However, there's all the hidden costs which Leora went through, and in Cambodia, as Jenny mentioned, digital wages are paid twice a month, so it's very admin heavy. So we encourage managers to calculate the cost of cash versus the cost of digital payroll, and then that also helps them to make the business case internally. As I already mentioned, really important to consult workers and to provide the training so that they can build acceptance and confidence with the new system. And particularly, and what we've seen is if there is no training once digitised, workers might just go and withdraw 100% of their wages on payday. So it's not really benefiting them. In fact, it's even more inconvenient, because instead of getting your wages at work, you're having to find the time to go to a cash point to withdraw all of your wages. And for the most vulnerable workers who lack confidence and knowledge to use those cash out points or to visit those cash out points, they might actually just be handing over their accounts details to someone else to do that, especially women. And that's certainly not an intended consequence of digitisation. Also providing a training on additional financial services around the products that workers would really value, such as sending remittances. As a really significant number of garment workers in Cambodia will send remittances, or topping up airtime, which we know workers value, will also increase their acceptance of digital wages. And finally, training is also really important to reduce risk from fraud, which we see increase. We've certainly seen that in Bangladesh. Digitisation increase, there are more attempts through fraud calls, and so it's really important to protect workers from that. we've also found that including some elements of financial health training, such as around savings and budgeting, can help workers to build their financial resilience and also helps them to accept their digital wages. It's also really important to consider the needs of female workers, who make up 80% of garment workers in Cambodia. So, and it can be a bigger step for women who may have less experience and confidence with financial services and technology. And also due to gender norms and women's role in society might have less access to the resources needed, such as a SIM card registered in their own name, or the time to learn and use new products. And so that really needs to be factored in as part of the planning and preparing for wage digitisation. And finally, we also recommend that factory managers collaborate with others, including local organisations for support and training, rather than going alone. We've actually developed, we've set all of this out in a digital wages toolkit for managers, which is an online tool we've developed with MasterCard Centre for Inclusive Growth, which is available in Khmer, Mandarin, as well as Bangla and Arabic and English. And we added Mandarin because, as Jenny said, there's a lot of factory owners and managers from China in Cambodia, and we wanted them to be able to use this toolkit too. So if you go to the next slide, please. And so as we've talked about, training is really, really important. And so these are the training that we recommend. So first of all, to consider training for managers. It's really important to introduce managers to the new digital wages system because workers will go and ask their supervisors if they've got any questions. So first of all, they need to understand the system and then to be able to support their workers. Otherwise, that can be confusing or even detrimental to the digitisation process. We also recommend a town hall training or floor level communications with the workforce about the changes in the payroll system and the benefits of digital wages, and also fraud prevention messages. And these should be held jointly with the financial service provider and at least a month before the workers get their first payment, which of course should be staggered across the workforce to allow workers to ask questions. And within that, need to really make sure that women and vulnerable workers are able to ask questions too, because they're the most likely to need the help, but may be sitting quietly at the back, lacking confidence to ask anything. And then through her project, we also deliver peer educator training. So we'll train 5% of the workforce around financial services and financial health, and then support them to be able to go and share their learning with 20 of their colleagues. And so that kind of disperses the knowledge through the factory. And it also means that when workers have got questions, particularly at the beginning around how to use an account, how to reset a PIN number, how to set a remittance, there's somebody in the factory who can ask them. So it's just all these different kind of ways of having the information. And just to add that the training should be for both male and female workers. And within our programme, we also have a session around talking about finances with your family to help workers to make joint decisions with their families rather than on their own, or just handing it over to somebody else. And so that means that they have more control over their how their wages are spent. So I'm now going to pass over to Setipong, who's going to tell us a little bit more about how and why we adapted the worker training for Cambodia.
Thank you, Ella. Hi, everyone. This is Setipong. I am BSR, her project representative in Cambodia. So, Ella has just mentioned, so in the pilot for Cambodian context, we have adapted the digitization material to address the following financial needs of male and female workers in Cambodia. As you may know that the majority of the people in Cambodia are owning more than one phone, and most of the garment workers, they have smartphone and access to the internet. Although most of the workers are phone savvy, they may lack of knowledge and also awareness about the use of internet and the application and the risk associated with the privacy and the security issue. So this may take a lot of time and effort to raise the awareness in terms of building their trust on the risk associated with the privacy when it comes to the use of mobile banking account. So another challenge is the worker lack of knowledge and also the confidence in terms of the usage of financial service. We found that most of the time, female worker parents who live in their hometown who decide how the remit money and will be used and also spent. So which means that the workers are not eager to learn more regarding to the financial service that is maybe beneficial to them. Another point is due to the Cambodian history, as you may know that people are here are not necessarily eager to plan or save in the future. For example, they may be afraid of the political instability and also some of the conflict. For example, in the previous election, so the people are very scared of the politician, for example, so they are not willing and also eager to plan or save in the future as well. For example, they usually spend more than they can earn for the worker and not aware about doing the budgeting, financial planning, and also worker also have high level of indebtedness. As you may know that most of the people, for example, government worker, so they own their own loan, and also when at the end of the month, so they also have to repay back for the family loan in the countryside, also in the hometown as well, which is the interest rate of the loan is around 25%, as the study that we found, and also as the saving rate is very low compared to the interest rate of the loan. So as a result, people have no incentive to save and also encouraged to take the loan. Another point is the worker often buy items such as mobile phone, new smartphone, and also motorbike using the installment plan. As you know that at any surrounding factory in Cambodia, they usually have the smartphone shop and also motorbike shop. And also most of the workers, they believe that buying in installment is the way to save for them. So that is totally wrong. That's why we need to raise the awareness regarding to this. And also despite more financial institutions, they have launched internet and also mobile banking application and also expand their ATM network. Most of the workers, they still unwilling to open the bank account and also grant it to the mobile banking application, or even though they don't even want to have the ATM card, and also the debit card, because they believe that all these means are only for the rich people, and also the people are working in the office and earning high income than them. This is the challenge for them, and also that they have in their minds. And also all those women in Cambodia, they culturally be able to manage the money in the household. Female workers, they don't have much for, when it comes to the big financial decision. For example, even buying the new smartphone and also new motorbike, or maybe they want to fix the house, so they still ask their husband to say yes or no, So most of the time, husband is the one who have the last word, yes or no. So this may one of the challenge for them to having and also granted to have the banking account. And also one of the things that I want to say as well is regarding to the more recently, International in Cambodia, they have conducted the worker assessment during the COVID-19, and they found that 88% of the workers reported that their income have been reduced as a result of COVID-19, and also the suspension of the factory have been closed, and also 53% have reported that they are having difficulty in repaying back their loan, and also 13% took additional debt to address their shortfall in their income. So this is something that we can consider in the worker training as well. So next slide, please. Okay, so I would like to share some of you with the tool Ella have mentioned, with the management tool as well. So this is the tech learning tool that we adapted from Bangladesh version, and also we designed it for the Cambodian context as well. So the tool specifically for the worker training, which is together with the MasterCard in Center for Inclusive Growth. So we have developed this tool where it used to engaging with the film, quizzes, and also animation to support workers to increase their financial health benefit from the digital web. As you can see that this tool is aimed to increase the worker digital literacy and confidence to use the technology, especially for women that they only have the smartphone and they use only for the Facebook, So we want them to learn something new regarding to the new technology with regard to the new knowledge as well. And our tool is include the 6 training model I have mentioned, starting from the introduction to the financial service. That is very vital for them to get to know more regarding to the service from the financial provider that they may be able to use in the future. And also how to manage their digital payroll. So this is something new to them with regard to digital payment and planning, borrowing responsibility, doing the budgeting, saving, and also the last topic and also the last model is we discussing regarding to how to empower them to talk about the finance with their family, especially with their husband, And each topic should include 15 to 20 minutes long based on the training curriculum. And the tool that we design can be standalone or a part of the blended training program. Based on the lesson that we have been learned, workers are very like a lot regarding to the audio feature that they can listen to the question, as that most of the government workers in Cambodia are very low literacy level. So some of them may not be able to read, So we have this audio feature. So they just click to listen and they just follow in the instruction. So very easy for them and very helpful for them as well. Another feature that they may like is the adapted screenplay, from the live action film that worker, they love the actor in the film who is representative of their life, because we go to the factory and ask the actor to do the film, so very like them in their life as well. And they are more engaged during the training session. And also for Cambodian context, we also did adapted for the doctor to be living with their grandparents in the hometown, because we believe that most of the government workers in Cambodia, they come from the countryside, which is the migrant, internally migrant to Phnom Penh. So it's good that to show them the doctor living with their grandparents and they doing the video call through Facebook with them together, to discuss how for the well-being of their children as well. And the film and animation also have been added into the YouTube, and it also can be easily for them to access and play in the factory content during the lunch break, and also at the holiday or maybe at the hometown, once they go to break and enjoy the holiday as well. And also the tool also available in Khmer English, Bangla, and also Arabic. And also I would like to invite you all, please feel free to check the tool in the link below, and also the live film and animation on our Her Project YouTube channel. You just tap Her Project and you will show all of the playlist in Bangladesh and also Cambodia version as well. So in the conclusion, our open source technology tool and training curricula can be used alongside any program designed to digitize tasks as an additional to in-person training or as a temporary replacement during the COVID-19. And we are very happy to work with organizations to use and integrate them into your or their program. Thank you. And I would like to hand over the floor back to the moderator.
Thank you very much to all our speakers today, and Setipong, Ella, Jenny, and Leora for all these insights. I wanted to just have a kind reminder that this is also a platform for collaboration and questions. So if you wanted to have any question on some of the content that you have just heard, or comments in terms of what you have also experienced in other countries, please use the chat setting or the Q&A setting of Zoom, so that we can also answer some of your questions. And it is still open right now. We have a few minutes to continue that discussion. And I just wanted to highlight, it's always impressive to see all the tools that are available through the BSR Her project. And when we started to organize those learning webinar exchange, we wanted to, of course, the first session was focused on the opportunities of digital payments for factories, for government, also looking at how it becomes more and more important in the COVID-19 settings. And this session, we also wanted to make sure that we can share some of the good practices in terms of how can you drive adoption with the workers, how can you make sure that there is all these steps that Leora, Jenny, Ella, and Setipong mentioned on encouraging the participation of the workers and giving them the tools and the skills to make sure that they can use those digital solutions even more. And I just wanted to also give the voice and the mic to one of the brands that has been leading this topic in Cambodia and in other countries, because we're very lucky to have Parin Hay from Market Spencer Cambodia with us on the call today. And so we wanted, Parin, thank you for being with us. We wanted to make sure that you can give us a little bit of an understanding of the work that Market Spencer has been doing on the topic of digital wages in Cambodia, to also show the roles that brands can play. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank Marshall and Better Than Cash to give me this great opportunity to share MNS experience in digital wage journey. So digital payment is one of MNS Plan A. It helps expand financial inclusion of low-income workers in global supply chain. So currently, 50% of MNS suppliers are paying workers through digital payment. So the most common bank use is Wing, because many agents around the factory, either in the country, in the city, or in the province. And another one is Akrida Bank. So funded by MasterCard, we propose to factory to join the Digital Wage project, transit from cash to digital payment. So there are some challenges throughout digital wage journey. So supplier found that the bank transaction fee is a bit high because they need to pay twice per month. And it takes time to convince the worker representative and union to accept digital payment. And most workers feel it difficult to get their wage via digital payment in terms of like bank technical process, how to use card to withdraw money, how to use mobile banking app or PIN code. And sometimes access to ATM is limited outside the city center. Like they need to travel to ATM to withdraw the money, and long waiting time to withdraw cash, especially on the payday. But although we face some of the mentioned challenge, BSR has supported us a lot throughout the journey, like meeting with the management to convince the transition from cash to digital payment, and like they provide some benefit, like the supplier will have low risk of cash loss or stolen, save production time, and more efficient. And for the worker side, BSR also provide worker insight or benefit of digital payment. The worker will learn new things via their mobile phone, like to pay the bill, to transfer the money, to purchase goods online. And also, they explain like how financial planning, budgeting, and saving help workers to reach their dream house, child education plan, and other future plan instead of installment. So at the end, I would like to thank BSR and team, and we hope to continue our next step, like the training with BSR and our supplier when the COVID-19 situation is better in Cambodia. Yes, that's all for MNS Experience. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Parin. Thank you for sharing your experience, and once again the importance of the support and the how to bring the work also to understand the full potential of these tools. We have one question which I'd like to address, if possible, to Leora and maybe to Ella and Setipong. There's a question around how do you create an ecosystem for the workers, for them to be able to use their money digitally as well, right? So not only to get paid digitally, but to also spend digitally, and especially a question around the role of merchants payments. So how could workers use their wallet or their bank account when they're paying for groceries or for other, financial needs? So I don't know if you have any example, Leora, from Cambodia or other countries, how this is a very important step for the development of the ecosystem. And Ella Setipong, if you have also examples of initiatives that can be done around that.
So, yeah, and a nice set of questions on the Q&A. Certainly, the goal is for people, so if workers simply cash out the full amount of wages on payday, it's a transaction account. probably good for the factory, the worker doesn't get the benefits of financial inclusion. So the goal is for workers to keep the money electronic. What we found, for example, in Bangladesh is that workers paid into a mobile money account, for example, really build the capability and confidence to send money home to family themselves without using an agent. Developing the secondly would be to be able to make purchases. We also know that if, for example, if a woman does the shopping with her own wages, her choices of food she has greater influence on the household's food basket. That's more challenging. That requires the ecosystem of the merchants wanting to accept digital payments, and there are many challenges there, ranging from the reliability of the technology and the internet connection to the tax system in various countries. I would add, though, that what's interesting is, anecdotally at least, we're hearing that during COVID, there's been rapid merchant payment digitization. Cash is unsanitary. It's easier to enforce physical distancing when people are paying electronically. And there'll hopefully be lessons we can learn from Latin America and elsewhere on how digitization of merchant payments has recently occurred. But Ella?
You're on mute.
Yeah, I'd just add to that in Cambodia, something that has changed recently is that the government of Cambodia did use remittances as a way to support workers in factories where they had been suspended, and so we're making monthly payments of $40, so $20 twice a month through a remittance, which then workers had to register for and then would go to an agent to cash out. And so whilst this isn't the same as opening an account, it is building their different use cases for different financial products. And that's something that the financial service providers really need to think about as to what workers value. So sending remittances, receiving remittances, topping up their phone savings, and build those use cases. And also identifying where they go and buy their food, the school fees, etc., and working on initiatives to encourage those payments to be digitized as well.
Marja, may I add something else? Sure. So what I think is really important in our study in Bangladesh, we find this big impact on savings of workers paid into bank accounts. Because banks, that's what banks do. They offer, excuse me, the benefit is you have access to a wide menu of financial services. But we didn't find that impact on workers paid into a mobile money account. They developed a different set of financial skills, including remittances. And so this also highlights the importance of interoperability within the country as a key regulatory piece, specifically here around interoperability between, for example, banks and mobile money providers. We're seeing in other countries, in West Africa, for example, where workers can sweep their money from their mobile account into a bank account that allows them to more easily save, and also to develop that payment history that could be used potentially for credit scoring for appropriate credit.
Great, thank you very much both. I just wanted to add, the topic of merchant payments and driving solutions to pay digitally. This is also one of the reasons why you need different stakeholders to work together on the topic of digital payments. And so that was one, it's one of the mandates of the Alliance to bring governments, companies, and national organizations to build that ecosystem with the financial service provider. So I know there's a few questions in the Q&A around how have government digitized government to people payments, social protection payments. As Ella mentioned, this has really accelerated during the COVID-19 crisis. And this is really seen as another channel to deploy digital payments, to show the importance of it and to create that ecosystem. So there's another question around how governments are supporting, the people receiving that money, or if the digital wage training that is available there could be used for G2P. This is exactly the type of cross-learning, between payment streams that can happen. There is also a lot of other trainings available for people receiving social protection and different programs, and that is one of the area that the Alliance works also on with governments. So if there's more interest on that, happy to discuss on the side. And we have just 3 minutes left, so I had we have two questions that were shared that I would love to be able to answer. One maybe for you, Ella, and I know it's a long topic, but you have to be short, around what are some of the mechanisms for factories to work with financial service provider in terms of the cost of the products. So have you seen example where the cost is being shared, or what is some of the negotiation or elements that factories need to take into account for that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's really important that the costs, because there are costs of digitization, of course, that those costs aren't just passed on to workers. And so that needs to be considered within the financial model that is developed. And I think that's something that for financial service providers, as they build their business case and invest in reaching out, in Cambodia, there's 800,000 workers. So that's actually a significant market segment for financial service providers to consider. But also I think it's really important for financial service providers to work with others, because at the beginning there is a risk in reaching out to this market as they're developing it. And so I think you're just talking about collaboration and working together across different organizations and sharing that learning to develop really strong use cases that work for financial service providers, because it makes it sustainable, works for employers because then they'll continue, and works for workers, which is really important.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those elements. Thank you, everyone. Craig, I'll let you conclude the session, and thank you for all the insights.
Great, thanks, Marjo. Yeah, I just want to thank all the speakers for their presentations and willingness to share their lessons and experiences. Obviously, there's a huge opportunity here that can benefit both workers and employers, but it's not so obvious that it's going to happen seamlessly. And so I think having organizations like Better Factories and URS to be supporting that process and facilitating it and sharing the lessons, I think is hugely beneficial, and hopefully will expedite the transition to responsible digital wage payments.